Am I audible to you? I was
Yeah,
just having some. Yes,
you're
you're
audible
audible.
to me. Am I
Yes,
audible?
and yes, perfect. And this was the bookshelf I was telling you about yesterday that you could have seen this thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
I
this is
can
like a
see
partial view of it.
I can see my favorite Murakami collection.
Yeah, I was going through your feed a few days back when I sent you the invite and I saw a bunch of Murakamis on it. So I mean, I assumed you'd like them. I absolutely love Murakami. He's one of my
Yeah,
favorite
he's my
authors.
current favorite, to be honest.
Yeah,
I just
that.
first I read Kafka on the Shore, and then
Hmm.
I read Norway Wood, and now I want to read the whole collection back to
Oh,
back.
oh, you should. And you know what? You should probably check out some of his more unorthodox work, like not the really famous one. Almost all of his work is great. But one of my personal favorites from Murakami is 1Q84, which not like a lot of people are like read
Okay,
conventionally. It's one of
okay.
his slightly unconventional
You,
ones. But welcome to the Kitabi life. We just started off with the
yeah,
conversation without
exactly.
giving you here. But it's so great to have you here. And as I was
I'm
telling everyone,
so, Mhm. I'm so
I
happy
was
to
saying,
be here.
yeah, it was so sweet of you to actually accept the invitation. It was so nice because I was just telling the people who were on the live before this uh, that this will be one of my slightly different lives from the ones which I've
Okay.
had before. But, not in terms of the content of the live itself, but in terms of the guest, because it's very interesting to have someone who works as a model, as an actress, and as an anchor, as what I find out, and it's something that I will be talking to you a lot about during the conversation about how books translates into this world. But before all of that, I have a question for you, and this is something that I ask almost every guest on my either on my podcast or on my Insta live. So you're a fairly public personality, like you're a public figure, but is there a facet to you which the world doesn't know? Is there something that you could tell us which we can't find from Google or from Insta or your Facebook profile or something? I know there are sites that people want to keep hidden, but something that you wouldn't mind sharing with the rest of us. Maybe something about your books or about your reading or something else whatsoever.
So, a lot of people who follow me, they know that I'm a big time book lover.
Mm-hmm.
But my books are a therapist to me. Like, I'll be very honest.
Okay.
Uh, I doubt a lot of people know this, but
Mm-hmm.
I have anxiety issues,
Okay.
and books play a vital role over there. Like, they have helped me to overcome it, and like today also, it's not that bad. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, everyone has it. It's not that bad. It's not clinical, but to control it, I
Mm-hmm.
have read a lot, and now I know tricks to control it
Yeah.
when I am
Right.
facing
And
it.
first of all, it's really great that you're opening up about anxiety because I've suffered from anxiety myself, and it's always great when someone, like, I mean, anyone opens up about it, let alone like a public figure, because it makes others feel more safer about their
Yeah,
own mental space and their mental zone, and just inspires them to be more comfortable in their shoes. But the other thing, I completely agree with you. I mean, for books, the same goes for me. Like, books serve as my safe zone, like, the place where I go to kind of run away from everything in the world, which is absolutely
absolutely
great.
great.
Like, you
Like,
can lose yourself in books and never, right? So Arushi, tell us this. What kind of books do you like to read? Like, do you have a particular genre, fiction, non-fiction? What are the things that makes you pick up a book?
first, I was a complete person who liked read. I'm so sorry, someone is calling. Can
I can't hear you. Sorry.
you hear me now?
Yeah. Yep, I
So,
can.
I was a big fan of love stories
Okay.
first, and then like 2 3 years ago, I was having a bad phase in my life, and I started reading a lot of self-help books. And now
Mm-hmm.
I can read anything.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a book and I
Okay.
can read anything. I've started reading history. I've started reading obviously I read self-help books. I've started reading
Mm-hmm.
Dan Brown, fiction,
Mm-hmm.
non-fiction. I mean, give me something, and if I read poetry, now I
Yeah.
can read anything. It's as long it's a book, it's a good book.
Mm-hmm.
I read it. Like
Right.
if my friends recommend me some book and I know that they are good, like they love reading, without even a question, I'll
Mm-hmm.
go and just pick the book and I'll read it.
That's a very interesting approach to take, because I personally have like been trying to do this for the past couple of years, where I've been trying to push beyond my general boundaries of what I'm reading. because I feel that I always get boxed into a echo
Yeah,
chamber where I'm reading the same kind of things again and again. So I'm trying to like push myself to read different kind of work, like maybe. And there are two extremes to it. Either I'm trying to read like more regional literature, like more like Bengali or Tamilian literature, which is obviously translated. I can't read in the original
yeah,
language,
okay, okay, okay.
but or for that matter, something like, so almost everyone reads the classic translated works, like something like your Marquez or your Murakami, but
Yeah,
not a lot
yeah.
of people would read your Han Kangs or your, say, a Taiwanese author or something like that. So I'm trying to push myself on those fronts to kind of increase the scope of my reading. But Arushi, let me ask you this, okay? And this might come across as slightly offensive, but this is something I have to ask to people, right? So this is a question, like, so I was running this by I was telling a few of my friends about the fact that I'm going to be interviewing you. And like in the past also, when I was talking to a couple of actresses and actors about this. And there appears to be like a very widespread myth or misconception, right? Like about like models or artists, like actors or actresses who are pretty, they generally don't engage in anything intellectual for that matter, like the classic legally blonde
Yeah,
story that is to be
I,
sold.
I get
So
it, what you're trying to say. A
yeah, so I
misconception.
mean, has that ever bothered you? Has that like ever come across you? I'm sure someone would would walk up to you.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Now I can, I can.
Oh, okay. So basically, my question is that how do you generally deal with that? That obviously it's a very stupid, very, very stupid notion to have. Literally anyone can read regardless of how they look, how they are, what they think, whatever, whoever they are as a person. The idea is, well, reading is a very pleasurable activity and it's regardless of what it is. But how do you deal with people coming up to you and putting those notions forward?
Um, this question is so accurate because a lot of times when people see that I have books, I read Gulzar, I read all these authors, and I can understand
Yeah.
also all of these. Like, oh my God, you read? Oh my God, you read such stuff. And I'm like, yeah, isn't that pretty normal? Like, why can't I?
Yeah.
Oh my God, like, oh my God, you are so disciplined. Living in Bombay, you've done Spritzvilla and you read and you have you're so mature with your thoughts. Like, how?
Right.
I'm like, excuse me, why cannot I be? Like,
Exactly. That's such a
what's so, oh my God in this thing? Like, I mean, come on. Because I am surrounded with a lot of girls and,
right.
people who are like this. I mean, my
Mhm.
whole group and the people I know, they are like this.
Right.
I know it.
And yeah, exactly. And like, that's such a and that's the thing, right? Like that was the next question I was kind of getting to. So the kind of profession that you've chosen for yourself, right? Like it is, so at the end of it, it's an art world of art, and I am a very staunch believer of the fact that one art form always affects the other. It doesn't necessarily have to be like reading is affecting your career as an artist, but rather the other way around as well. Or like so how has that journey been for you? Has reading books helped you in your journey as an artist? And if so, how?
Obviously,
How?
obviously. I mean, first and first, for anything, I believe to start anything with your life, you need discipline, and I get my discipline from books.
Right.
So I read a lot of self help books, and there are always two to three kind of books I'm reading at a time. One is fiction, one is non-fiction or self help or something, and one is poetry. So
Right.
n- yes or no, you agree or not, but a lot of self books are kind of similar, but they
Mm-hmm.
have something or the other, like in a way they tell
Right.
the things, okay,
Mm-hmm.
but they're kind of similar. And those
Mm-hmm.
books keep on reminding me that I have to be on track, I have to be disciplined to achieve certain things in life.
Right.
And whenever, so it keeps me disciplined. And Rahi baat, when it comes to performance,
Mm-hmm.
mm, reading opens up your imagination. And as an actor, I need to be wide with my imagination. I need to imagine things to act
Right.
because for me, acting is acting. For me, acting a definition is to behave in a certain way in an imaginary situation where
Right.
you will use your imagination. Acting is not
Right.
faking. Acting
Right.
is you. How would you behave in a certain situation? This is
Right.
happening to you.
Right.
So books help me. I mark
Right,
my monologues in books. If I'm preparing for a character and if I come across
right,
something which is very similar to that, I
right,
mark it and I pin it and make notes. Oh, this I can use
right,
on this.
right.
So it helps me a lot that
Right.
way.
And it's quite interesting. I mean, first of all, the first thing that you mentioned about self-help book being similar, I think it also comes a lot in terms of the context you're reading them in and at the
Yeah.
time of your life you're reading them at. For example, I think Ikigai was a book which came out a few years ago, which everyone really loved. And when I read it, I liked the book, but I thought that, oh wait, you know what? I already know a lot of these things and are things that
I,
I'm practicing.
I was
Right.
talking about to a friend about this only.
Yeah. So
That
like, I mean, yeah. So I mean, it's those kind of things. I think it's once if you're in that zone and if you're in that place in life where well that self-help book might appeal a lot to someone, but it might not appeal to you. Just
yeah.
not because of its ideas are wrong. It's just because you're already practicing them. So it might not make a very invigorating read for you, right? But
Yes, and
yeah,
also, I take it this way, but I was reading Ikigai and I was like, okay, okay, I know this, I know this, I know this, I do this. But then also, it was a validation for me, कि, oh, ठीक है, life में सही जा
same.
रहे हो. So I take it that way.
That's quite cool. That's quite cool. I mean, and but that's a stranger part of things. But that, like the more self-help books you read, the more you'll realize that there are just these bunch of contrasting ideas out there which work for some people, which don't work
And
for others,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So yeah, like that's just one piece of unsolicited advice I would offer on like self-help books. That
yeah,
right. I mean, if you end up like if the book stands out for you, it stands out for you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's simple as that. Like
yeah,
unless it can
exactly.
like deeply motivate you, I don't think like simply because it's a famous book, it should be something practiced by the
There,
person who's
yeah, there are
reading it.
times when I've started reading a book and I feel like, okay, this is not working for me, and I shut it and I don't read it anymore. So
Right.
it's
So,
completely fine.
right. So, but you mentioned that you like to read like for you acting is doing something in an imaginary world, like putting yourself in an imaginary situation, and you like to learn about things from your monologues are underlined in your books. So, has there been any like impactful book that you've read through your career which has like just changed the way who you are as a person, not necessarily professionally, but just in general? Like
Yeah,
any books that you've read which have like impacted you so much that they forced you to change as a person, or like just organically or inorganically changed you?
um, not a fiction, but Atomic Habits.
Oh my god, I really love that book. I can't stop recommending that book to people. Yeah, but
Yeah,
it's
I
a
mean,
wonderful, wonderful book.
uh, I get like now I'm very much into fitness also. Like as passionate as I am
Right.
about books, I am about fitness as well. And
Hmm.
all credit goes to Atomic Habits.
Right. So, what
I
aspect of the book stood out for you? Which,
you
like,
know
any particular lesson or the book in general?
the book in general, like there are so many things I quote and I keep quoting from Atomic Habits. I'm a person who forgets things. So you if you ask me who's the author, I'll forget. If you ask
Right.
me, I'll be like, यार मैंने पढ़ी थी book पढ़ी थी, and you'll be like, do you have you read this book? I'll be like, and then you'll show me the book. Yeah, 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 I have read it. So
Yes,
my memory is like poor.
right.
But like but in this Atomic Habits has a, such an influence in my life.
Mhm.
There are so many things, like there's this quote that the spores take care of themselves. And
Mm,
if you break a stone, it's not the
mm,
100th blow which count, but all the blows which is there till
yeah,
100. So
right.
all these quotes from Atomic Habits, and also I used to hate working out. Like not hate is a strong word, but I never used to like working out. I used to sulk when it comes to you used to came. I
Mm,
had to work out or something. I used to
right.
cry कि oh my god अब रोना पड़ेगा, मतलब workout करना पड़ेगा,
Right.
and अब इस इंडस्ट्री में है फिर तो होना ही पड़ेगा, what to do. So I
Mm,
read the book and then uh, I'm like, okay, for next 30 days, I'm going to work out for 30 minutes, no matter what, crying, whining, whatever. And this happened in lockdown. Can you
right.
imagine at home?
I can. I can. It's
And then
solid.
there was no way looking back. Like, I fell in love with working out because I made a habit and because of Atomic Habits. So,
Yeah.
still, I try to apply it in my life again and again.
Right.
I have a board where I mark all my habits I want to get in my life, and I just
Right.
check mark them every day for next
Right.
21 days or like 30 days. And I get
Right.
used to it. So, yeah.
Right. That's very interesting. But and that just also draws me towards the other side of things, right? Because as much as people love to decry it, fiction also is like ends up shaping people way more than what nonfiction
Yeah,
might,
yeah,
and
yeah.
especially and particularly in your situation where you're as an artist, it might help you just relate to your work a lot more than what a non-fiction book might. So, like, I mean, was there ever a fiction book that helped you prepare a lot for a character, or just, I don't know, made you think deeply or differently about a character that you're preparing for, or like your work in that?
Yeah, Norway word may
Okay,
what's the name of the girl? Very bad with names. The girl who's a little crazy with M, with the word M.
right, yeah, sure. I
Do
mean,
you
doesn't
remember? Do
really
you
matter. Like,
remember?
you can,
So yeah, that so it really helped me because she was crazy, and when I'm playing, I'm shooting for something, and that girl is also little crazy, but because of
right.
Norwin Wood, I could think out of the box. I mean, I was sticking
Mm,
to very script-like things, and जो बोलेंगे मैं कर लूंगी type. जैसे I'm a director's person, so जो मुझे बोलेंगे वो मैं कर लूंगी. But here I started putting in my inputs. I started telling my
right,
director, can I do this? Can I do that?
right,
Because I got my
right,
inspiration from that girl. Like so,
right.
yeah, it has helped me. And in general, also in life, there are so many times, where you are going through something and you're reading a particular book, and it
Mm,
actually helps you. It actually gets you going because you're like, okay, there's hope in life. I mean, so
right.
yeah.
Okay, so I'll just ask you a very different question now. So have you been reading ever since you were a kid, or like was this a habit that you kind of forced yourself to get into as some part of some exercise for anything whatsoever, or
Okay, this is an interesting question. So, I remember so my school plays a big role in this because we had to have you used to have a library period once a week in
right?
our school.
Same.
Yeah, so we were
Yeah.
allowed to borrow books from the school, but अब स्कूल की लाइब्रेरी में कैसी books होती है
Huh. I
मतलब
had Robinson Crusoe, which I remember reading in my school's library.
we had very basic books and like comics and all, and like I mean
Acha.
matlab, I mean we started reading. I don't even remember what kind of books I used to read back then. Then I remember my brother reading I Too Had a Love Story by Ravinder.
Hmm.
So I asked him मुझे भी पढ़नी है ये, and he's like no,
Hmm.
like I won't share my book with you. He was my cousin brother. I mean,
Acha.
he was just
Okay.
2 years. I was in eighth standard and he was in 10th. So at that time,
Right.
I mean, mature people would like share books or
Hmm.
something. Though I still
Right.
don't. Until and unless a person is a book lover, I'd be like, no, I can't
Right.
share my books with you.
Right. Yep.
So I went to my librarian and I was like, I too had a love story here. Like, do you have this? And she looked at me like, okay, dude, you are in eighth standard. You're not allowed to read such books with that look. So requested my brother, please, please, please give me this book. And from there I
Right.
started reading Chetan Bhagat, all these Indian authors, and I kind of started liking love stories. And at that age, you also want a boyfriend, and you get fascinated with all these love stories.
Right.
And dheere dheere, I started reading books, and then a phase came and where I was not in a good place in my life, and I had a mentor. He started giving me books to read. A lot of books with self-help books, like how to make friends and influence people, the power of subconscious mind, the secret, and all
Right.
such books. And then I was like, okay, I mean, अब तो मतलब मुझे पसंद है पढ़ना. So that's how I started reading. And I remember in my school days also history, geography के periods होते थे.
Right.
सामने geography की book होती थी, उसके अंदर मेरी fiction होती थी
No,
और मैं वो पढ़ रही होती थी. Yeah, there are so many incidents
right.
where our captains have helped us because books, love stories were not. I am from a very strict school. I mean, this is
Right.
a school where more than four hairpins are not allowed, so we couldn't have haircuts.
Okay.
Uh,
Wow.
and
Okay.
yeah, so जब वो जब ऐसे क्लास इंस्पेक्शन वगैरह होती थी तो जो हमारे क्लास के कैप्टन होते थे, हमारे क्लास में से जो कैप्टन होते थे स्कूल के,
Huh.
they used to
Huh.
take out books and hide us because कहीं हम
Right.
and कहीं
Okay.
पकड़े ना जाएं. So yeah, like there's the thing, and all my
Yeah.
friends around me in school also
Right.
used to love reading all these love stories. So I guess I
That's
get
really
it from
cool.
there.
Yeah, that's quite cool of a story to have, like, and so I mean, as many my school friends didn't read a lot back in the day, like they do read a
Okay.
bit now, But yeah, I never had that issue because so I always used to sneak come back home. My parents are like my mom is a major bibliophile and they all were always encouraging of this activity. So I used to like buy books and just like keep reading them at
Oh,
home. I was that
nice.
way into it. But it's a very interesting thing that you mentioned, Ravinder, because that's something that's again one of the most interesting things that I like to talk to people about is so it's a very odd relationship that I share with their work. It's not that I've read a lot of them, but so on the one hand, literature written by say Mr. Bhagat or Mr. Ravinder or Preeti Shenoy is very popular. It's very massy. It reaches out to people. It's simple to read and narrate stories, and you can talk about a lot of things. On the other hand, there are a bunch of people who will trash them for not being good books, right? Not for not meet for diluting the standards of literature and um, I don't know for whatever reasons that they're actually if you're reading them, you're not reading books.
Yeah.
There needs to be something there like say a QC of sorts, right? I mean, I was on that side earlier. Then I started disagreeing with them heavily because I believe that's like a very classist way of looking at reading, and it's very important that it's to have people read any kind of stuff, and as long as the story appeals to the reader, it doesn't really matter what any other reviewer thinks of it. But I really want to know where you stand in it because you've gone from like reading uh it's not that you can't read any of it now also,
I
but you
read.
read Murakami. Yeah, you read
I read it.
Murakami and you read Chetan Bhagat. I've done the same. So where do you stand in this? What's your take?
I did it. Ravinder happens to be my very good friend now. We met
Hmm.
online only, and I can't imagine a fan from being a fangirl to being his friend. I read it. I read his recent book as well, Write Me a Love Story. He
Right.
sent me over that book, and there are times where see Murakami is something easy to read, but books like I'm reading Lolita right now, and
Hmm.
it requires your mind. You can't be reading it anywhere. मतलब कहीं भी उठा के नहीं पढ़ सकते. But
Right.
books like I Too Had a Love Story and all, it's a very easy book, and you can if you're sitting in your vanity, if you have people around, you've gone for a meeting and in a place which is very noisy and you want to pass your time, you open up such books because they're easy to read and there's a good feel good factor, and
Right.
I'm really glad because these writers write it and they are not complicated stories, not complicated to read, because अगर वो चीजें नहीं होती तो मैं कभी अब गेम ऑफ थ्रोन्स और आनंद मार्टिन नहीं पढ़ पाती, because मैं इजी ही नहीं पढ़ पाती. I can't pick up
Right.
GOT directly and say that I am a fallen in love with book. नहीं, आप बुक समझ ही नहीं
Right.
पाओगे और आपको
Right.
रीडिंग से कभी प्यार ही नहीं हो पाएगा. मतलब दैट्स माय
Fair
थिंग.
enough.
आई डोंट नो अबाउट अदर
Fair enough.
पीपल. I
Fair
read
enough. That's
those
right.
I read those stuff. That's why I can read other stuff right now. I'm gradually increasing to my range of books.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I still read them. I still pick up books and I read
Right.
all such books.
Right. And that's a very interesting thing that you pointed out because I think that's something a lot of people miss, that it's a stepping stone towards reading other kinds of literature. Does again, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's worse or better literature, right? Like what you
Yeah,
initially
there's no
read. As long as the story is reaching out to the people, it's enabling a class of readers. I think it doesn't really matter. But like just a fun other question: what's your most controversial book related opinion? Like something like I think both of us share in common is that we won't lend books to anyone who's not a book lover because who doesn't respect
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the book enough. But I think that's a very regular book like bibliophile opinion. Most bibliophiles are like that. But what's your most controversial one? Like there are so many do's and don'ts for readers, or like in the book reading community, which you think is like would be not in line with anyone in the bookish community.
Um, yeah, one though is this only, that there are differentiation between good literature and bad literature, and sometimes people be like,
Right.
"Why are you reading this book? I mean, there's no need to read this book. Yeah, what is this?" So I'd
Right.
be like, मतलब मुझे मन कर रहा है ना पढ़ने का. Let me read ना.
Right.
नहीं है, मुझे नहीं पढ़ना इंटेलिजेंट, कुछ नहीं है मेरे में इतना दिमाग. As long as I'm reading, like let me read. Maybe I am getting something out of that book.
Right. Fair enough.
So yeah, that's one thing which I really like. I don't speak it out, and after this conversation, I'm gonna pick people if they question me,
Yeah.
why are you reading? I'll be like, maybe Marzi. Like I want to read it, I'll read it.
Right.
And what else? Like, uh, I mean, there are people who be like, कि हम पढ़ ही नहीं सकते.
Right.
I don't
Right. Fair
understand
enough.
such people.
Why though? Like, I mean, what I
I don't. I'm sorry. I mean, I have seen people who couldn't read and they have started reading now and they read. Like my best friend,
right,
she's a,
right.
bachelor in English honors. Still, she couldn't read. I mean, the books I'm reading right now, she has read it like
Wow.
12 years ago. She's read Dan
Wow.
Brown and all, and still she can't, like, she doesn't feel like reading. मतलब उसके scripts भी sometimes she be like यार AD को she'll say and then she learns ऐसे ही अपने dialogue मतलब उसको सुन के जल्दी याद हो जाते हैं. And now she's reading. After all her
Okay,
life,
that's
she's
a
never
very
read. Now,
strange curve.
yeah. So
That's an absolutely strange curve, but yeah,
I mean,
to
it's
know.
I know
Okay,
it's
that's
mean to say, but I'm sorry.
so.
I don't.
What I do in those situations is like I've had loads of people do this. Like because I've been a reader all my life, and some of my closest friends are they don't like to read or they never used to read, and then so what I particularly did was I figured out what their interests were, and and I tried gifting them books which were in line with them. So like for my guy gang who are really into football, when Sir Alex Ferguson came out with his memoir or biography, so I made sure I gifted it to all of them. So for them, I just use that thread, use one interest to drive the other, and now at least some of
Yeah.
them end up reading something or the other. So I think I mean, I am with you on that zone. Like, I just that it's a very different approach that I take over there. But Arushi, tell me this: who are your favorite authors, or if you have any, that is, like
Uh,
some authors work which just appeals to you regardless of which area is written about, he or she is written
right
about.
now, I'm a very big fan of Murakami. Uh, I mean, both the books I read in like 4 5 days. Kafka on the
Right.
Shore and Norway Wood. Like I finished them in 4 5 days. I was on it. Like मुझे खत्म करने. It was a race within me कि अब ये मुझे इतने दिन में pages खत्म करने हैं. I like Manto. I
Mm-hmm.
like it a lot.
Yeah.
I love short stories of Manto and like
Right.
uh, sometimes I read it and I just sit back and I'm like ये क्या हो गया ये
Mm.
कौन सा
Yeah.
turn आ गया story में.
Yeah.
And I love poetry of Gulzar.
Right. It's again interesting because you mentioned Manto and Gulzar. Which language do you read them in? Do you read like a
Hindi.
translated version, or you read them in Hindi?
Translated.
Acha, translated in Hindi, like from
Yeah,
like Manto Urdu to Hindi, and Gulzar
yeah.
in his original Hindi, or like wait, Urdu to Hindi.
Uh, Mixed. Like sometimes it's original Hindi and sometimes Urdu converted.
Have you like ever read the same work by a person in two different languages? I mean, like Gulzar's poem translated in English or in Hindi, or like in his
I've read
original
it.
as well.
I have read it in English also. I've read it in Hindi also. Gulzar.
Do you think something gets lost in translation? It
It
does,
does.
doesn't it? Why is that? Why do you think that exists? Because okay, now I'll just like take a different curve here because something I discussed on an open mic a while back, and I agree with you that there is something lost in translation. But when you think of it, it's such a dichotomy that is created, right? So when you're reading Murakami, right? Murakami is writes in Japanese and it's translated to English, right? And although he has a say in the translation process, but then when you think of something like a Gabriel Marquez who writes in Spanish and then it's translated to English, now, when you read Murakami or when you read Marquez, you're thinking that you're reading about a particular culture or a particular story that they're telling you. But it just might be the case that you're not actually reading what that person has put out there for you. And as much as they have a say in that process, why do you think that this exists? Like this dichotomy exists? Do you think is it because of the contextual nature of language, or it's just that I don't know it's just simply impossible for people to translate things?
I don't know. Like when you translate Gulzar into English,
Hmm.
कुछ गुम हो जाता है मतलब like how in Hindi
Huh.
when we there's a language and there's a way of showing love.
Right.
Like हिंदी में आप तीन तरीके से प्यार शो कर there are three ways to call a person आप तू
हाँ,
तुम.
right, right,
इंग्लिश में नहीं है. इंग्लिश में एक ही है।
It's obviously right.
तो
Right.
आप, तुम और तू से आप 3 डिफरेंट रिलेशन बता सकते हो 2 लोगों के बीच में, कि वो उसको आप बोल रहा है तो क्या रिलेशन होगा, तू बोल रहा है तो क्या
Correct. Correct.
रिलेशन होगा।
Right.
But in English, it's not like that. So these little
Right.
things, I guess, because of them, and also there are depends on the translator also, because I have 2, 3 different kind of books uh,
Mm.
r- of Manto converted by 3 different translators, and you can make the difference in the Hindi, the
Right.
way of, and and
Right.
so I'm a person who doesn't know a lot about when it comes to authors and all. I just go to a bookshop and whatever book I like, and I read it, I read the review, I just pick it up.
Mhm.
So if you
Right.
ask me कि मंटो का सबसे best translator कौन है, तो I wouldn't know that. So
Right.
now I've started
Right.
focusing on it, because I've got in touch with people who pay a lot of attention
Mm.
to it, and who take Hindi literature, especially Hindi or Bengali literature, very seriously.
Right.
So they've started, like, pinpointing me that if you're reading,
Mm.
then why
Mm.
not, like, read
Right.
something which is like better version. So it depends on, I guess, translator to translator also.
Right, fair enough. No, because it's very interesting that you mentioned "aap tum aur tu" wala thing, because I had spoken to on one of my podcast recordings. I'd spoken to a translator who translated an old Bengali work from the 1960s into English, and
Okay.
she particularly pointed this out, where you know how the how in Indian languages, any language for that matter, Hindi or Tamil, Marathi, whatever you're picking up, there is a mama, chacha, tau, tai, masi, vagera, right?
Exactly.
And English doesn't have that. English has just an
Uncle.
uncle, aunt, or like you have an additional adjective to add to a maternal or paternal uncle, but it still doesn't like cover the wide gamut. And that just kind of goes on to show like the cultural context of the language in which it is developed and why it is put out there. So I mean that's something I totally get. And in fact, I had an opportunity to talk to Nandita Das earlier on my podcast, right? I had
Yeah.
interviewed her. Like so, and because I particularly was enamored by her work in general, and particularly when she came out with Manto's biography, because she had to do something unthinkable, and she had to work from source material which is in different languages to kind of put this together and putting that story together. I mean, it's something you should like hearing her talk about her work is just a different volume altogether. But yeah, like that's something very interesting. So I mean that brings us to the end of this conversation. It was so lovely to have you, Arushi,
Same
and
here.
it's great to know. And I think this is so wonderful for you to be very open about your love for books, because I think it very frankly inspires others who are in the same profession or like trying to pursue the same thing, and it kind of just gives them a more purposeful, more direction in life, which gives you. Someone just pointed out we're discussing Hindi while talking in English, and that's quite
अरे यार,
interesting.
it's okay. Yeah.
Very interesting. But yeah, like I mean, as I was saying, I think it's very inspirational for people to find out that people who they look up to are reading and are doing something that they might associate with. And I don't know, I would like to believe like even like say our conversation helps one more person read. We've done our work.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah, I
kind of
agree.
just changes this thing.
And you are doing
Anyway,
an amazing job. Trust me. I keep on saying this again and again whenever I talk to you.
thank you, thank
It's an amazing work, and all the best. And yeah, like, stay in touch and send me a list of
you.
books
Yes.
I should read.
Anytime you just text me what you're in the mood to read, and we'll like figure out what you should read.
No, so
That's never an issue.
there's no mood of me. I told you, like,
Right,
if I know
right.
someone who has a lot of knowledge about books, and if he
Mm.
recommends me, he or she recommends me about books, मैं अंधों की तरह books pick करके पढ़ने लग जाती हूँ. So like
Perfect,
I
perfect.
don't
So
have
we'll
moods.
pick.
I just read.
So fine, I'll send you like a list of my favorite books, and then you can pick out
Done.
something from there to do.
Done.
Okay, this was great. So thank you so much for doing this. Bye bye.
Thanks for inviting me. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.